Good morning, dear students. In this series of lectures, today we will discuss the character sketch of Celia and, of course, contrast her with Rosalind. We will compare both the characters. So let's discuss Celia. Celia is a secondary character, but we discuss it just after Rosalind simply because of her intimate connection with Rosalind, and also because a comparison between the two is very important. Celia is no less lovable as a woman than Rosalind, means she is equally lovable as Rosalind is. She is immediately and brilliantly attractive. Verity points out that one is apt to overlook Shakespeare's secondary characters. The Celia is eclipsed somewhat by Rosalind and gets less attention than she well merits. Her part in the play is that of the unselfish woman. She is selfless woman. The action of her father in seizing the dukedom has placed her in a position in which filial duty seems incompatible with loyalty to the cousin whom she loves so much. Yet, she must somehow have reconciled these conflicting obligations, and if at last she has to choose between them, the fault lies with circumstances. She is, un- she is unswearing in her love of Rosalind. She is unwavering, means she loves Rosalind too much, for whom she sacrifices everything and faces unknown perils. If we talk about her appearance, she was beautiful, but with a beauty more placid and less sparkling than that of Rosalind. Orlando speaks of them both as fair and excellent ladies. She was included in Rosalind's thoughts when the latter uttered the warning, "Beauty provoketh thieves sooner than gold." She was shorter than Rosalind and less majestic in appearance. She has a sweet, gentle expression and a habitually serious countenance. Rosalind calls her "my pretty little coz" and "sad brow and true maid." Her love for Rosalind is very well known. Celia's love for Rosalind is without bounds or limits. This is frequently referred to in the play. She herself tells her cousin about this. "Herein I see thou lovest me not with the full weight that I love thee." The love has become a proverb at her father's court. Oh no, for the duke's daughter, her cousin, so loves her. Being ever from their cradles bred together, she would have followed her exile, or have died to stay behind her. She is at the court, and no less beloved of her uncle than his own daughter, and never woo ladies loved as they do. Celia herself furnishes us with the following most beautiful picture of loving friendship and intimacy. She says, "We still have slept together, rose, rose at an instant, learned, eat together, and wheresoever we went, like Juno's swans, still we went coupled and inseparable." Her love is practically demonstrated when she shows her actions that she cannot live apart from Rosalind. She says, "Shall we be sundered? Shall we part, sweet girl? No, let my father seek another heir. Therefore, devise with me how we may fly." Her loyalty and unselfishness in all her actions, we find her loyal and unselfish. She always thinks for others, never for herself. She went into voluntary exile with Rosalind. In selecting Arden as the place of exile, she was thinking only of her cousin's happiness. Rosalind is depressed and losing for a moment her power of initiative. Us. Why, whither shall we go? Celia at once replies, to seek my uncle in the forest of Arden. This is certainly the only suggestion that can cheer Rosalind. Now let's discuss her life in the forest of Arden. Once in the forest of Arden, Celia adapts herself to all the moods and whims of her light-hearted friend. She herself retires into the background and comes forward only when Rosalind requires her sympathy or cheerful companionship. It is important to note that Touchstone, who was a shrewd judge of character, is the one person in the play who appears to have been thoroughly devoted to Celia. Of him, means Touchstone, she tells us, he will go along over the wild world with me. Now, let's talk about her intelligence, her prudence, and common sense. Celia's character teaches us how ineffectual are prudence and common sense against the attacks of Cupid. Celia reproaches Rosalind for the extravagances which her love has led her to commit. She says, you have simply misused our sex in your love parade. We must have your doublet and hose plucked over your head and show the world what the bird hath done to her own nest. She playfully disparages her cousin's love and contrasts it with her own imagined common sense. When Rosalind proposes to go find a shadow and sigh till he come, Celia remarks, and I will sleep, and yet she no sooner met Oliver, but they looked, no sooner looked, but they loved. This is irony. Verity comments. One of the most diverting things about Celia is the airy cynicism which she is pleased to affect and which meets with a nemesis so swift and sweeping. She marvels at the possibility of love at first sight, smiles at love's alarms and anxieties and the weakness of youth and folly, holds the oath of a lover, very cheap indeed. And then the wilding of the time shatters the house of cards, and with the exquisite irony of unconsciousness, the other pair of lovers proceed in their turn to wonder at the very wrath of love. Orlando even asking in Celia's own words, is it possible? Now let's compare the characters of Celia and Rosalind. Celia's silence and reserve form a reservedness form a contrast to Rosalind's teasing loquacity, her self-distrust, and feminine weakness to Rosalind's disposition to exercise command over herself as well as over others. When the two cousins are alone, Celia is full of life and humor, but in the presence of others, she is content to play the part of a spectator. Verity thus describes the difference in the two ladies. He says, Celia is less impulsive than her companion and more conventional in her sense of strict decorum. Thus, she seems to think that Rosalind is a bit too frank towards Orlando after the wrestling and gently cuts short the interview. There is a touch of seriousness in her good humored remonstrance. You have simply misused our sex in your love plate. The reason is that she has less sense of humor than her cousin and therefore looks at a situation more from its serious side. She has an alert, resourceful brain. The scheme of escape to the forest of Arden is hers, and it is she who suggests provisions for the journey. In witty speech, she holds her own, while she has sheer genius for teasing. The real charm of her nature may be inferred from Rosalind's devotion, from her influence over Touchstone, and her conquest of Oliver. Lady Martin has pointed out that the different natures of the two ladies are well expressed by different ways in which they are affected by Oliver's narrative. Celia exclaims, "Oh, I have heard him speak of that same brother, and he did render him the most unnatural that lived amongst men." Rosalind's first thought is not of this brother's cruelty, but whether her lover has forgotten the past and interposed to save his life. But to Orlando, did he leave him there, food to the sucked and hungry lioness? With this, the character sketch of Celia ends. That's all for today, and have a nice day. Okay, let's discuss one more character today, that is of, let's take a wait a while. Okay, now we will discuss the character sketch of Duke Senior in Banishment. Duke Senior is Rosalind's father. Duke Senior has been banished from his kingdom, that is dukedom, by his own younger brother, Frederick. He is living in the forest of Arden when we first meet him. He is like the old Robin Hood of England. He is the friend of unfortunate, a lover of nature and simplicity, and an enemy to all flattery and false show. He borrows no dignity, yet is always dignified and meets always with respect. Who's that fellow? Yes, you think that is Jakes. He bears adversity with philosophic calmness. Wood and Marshall point out that the keynote of the Duke's character is contentment, that is satisfaction. He always looks upon the bright side of things, means he is optimistic. Just as Jakes always sees the gloomy side, the dark side, that is, Jakes is pessimistic while Duke Senior is optimistic. To him, adversity itself is a sweet, he says, means, dear students, this Duke Senior is very optimistic, he is very hopeful, and he seeks sweetness, he seeks a ray of hope in adversity, as we evidence in his words, own words. Sweet are the uses of adversity. This is the most quoted line in English literature. So, dears, you must remember this line. Sweet are the uses of adversity. This is spoken by Duke Senior. That sweet are the uses of adversity, which, like the toad, ugly and venomous, wears yet a precious jewel in his head. Very important, very important. Sweet are the uses of adversity, which, like the toad, ugly and venomous, wears yet a precious jewel in his head. That simply means toad is the frog that appears to be ugly and that is venomous, that is poisonous, but it wears precious jewel in his head. That simply means adversity teaches us a lot. The opposite situation teaches us a lot. We learn from adversity, we become real human beings after undergoing some adverse situation. That's why adversity is called as precious. As you have read Francis Bacon, what he says that adversity doth best discover virtue, and prosperity doth best discover vice. Means adversity make you a virtuous person, makes you a virtuous person, and prosperity makes you a vicious person. He can translate his misfortunes into a state of peace and happiness. He can derive entertainment even from the melancholy of Jakes. There is no situation from which he cannot extract some useful lesson. About his life of banishment in the forest, he says, and this our life exempt from public haunt finds tongues in trees, books in the running brooks, sermons in stones, and good in everything. I would not change it. Optimistic lines. There is a ray of hope. Now let's discuss his sense of contentment, that is satisfaction, but how he satisfied is. Orlando speaks of the Duke and all his contented followers. Duke Frederick finds that his kingdom is rapidly being drained of all its noblest and best subjects. Every day, people were leaving his kingdom and going to live with the Duke. We learn that he is always surrounded by many merry men, happy men. When Oliver asks Charles about the whereabouts of the Duke Senior, he replies, they say he is already in the forest of Arden, and a many merry men with him, and there they live like the old Robin Hood of England. They say many young gentlemen flock to him every day and fleet the time carelessly, as they did in the golden world. His gentleness, the Duke's sweetness of disposition and gentleness win love and ready obedience from almost every day. This becomes clear in the scene in which Orlando, with drawn sword, presents himself before the Duke. Orlando's assumed violence vanished before the gentle Duke. Orlando says, pardon me, I pray you. I thought that all things had been savage here. The Duke never utters a word of bitterness against his surprising brother. He never thinks of revenge. He spends his time in the company of his loving lords and extends his kindness to all newcomers. Touchstone, Adam, Orlando, Rosalind as Ganymede, and Oliver. No duke or monarch was ever more approachable than he. Rosalind thus describes her first meeting with the duke. Rosalind was disguised as a shepherd youth. She says, I met the duke yesterday and had much question with him. He asked me of what parentage I was. I told him of as good as he, so laughed and let me go. Now, at last, his return to power. The Duke shows that same gentleness and magnanimity when he gets back his kingdom. He accepts his good fortune in the same philosophic spirit that characterized his behavior under adversity. He displays no eagerness to assume power again. He regained his new fallen dignity as a means to make all others also happy. In the following words, first in the forest, let us do those ends that here were well begun and well begot, and after every of this happy number that have endured shrewd days and nights with us, shall share the good of our returned fortune according to the measure of their states. With this, the character sketch finishes. That's all for today, and have a nice day.